The missing teen, the dead brother, and the killer stepdad. Amy Fitzpatrick, an Irish girl lost in Spain. This case is subject to a lot of hearsay and potential misinformation. While I attempt to be factual in what I report, contradictory information is presented from different sources. I also intend to avoid any slanderous or libellous comments on the living parties involved by avoiding commenting directly on whatever my opinions may be, but rather supposing hypothetical theories based on the information. If you have any questions, email me at admin@mysteryconfidential.com. Ultimately, I do this because I want to make a difference in the case and hopefully alert somebody to a case that may lead to discovery. My thoughts in making this video are 100% with Amy. This story is certainly eye-opening, particularly the events after Amy Fitzpatrick vanished, but let's not forget that it involves the disappearance of a teenage girl, a girl that would now be in her early 30s, and the world has been robbed of Amy. I hope that we can reignite interest in finding her and spread the message outside of Ireland. Amy was 15 when she went missing. She would be 30 this year. The chunk of her life that is unexplained is horrifying. I hope that she's out there, but it seems unlikely with every passing year. The story started for Amy in Dublin, the Republic of Ireland. Amy lived with her mother, Audrey Donoghue. Audrey had met Dave Mahone. There was tension in the family between Amy and her stepfather, but this is pretty common. Amy's brother was Dean. Dean would later die at the age of just 23. At face value, they appeared to be an average family with a happy life in Ireland, but when a business opportunity took David to Malaga, selling real estate amongst other British and Irish expatriates, it fell apart drastically. Amy was told that the trip to Spain would be a holiday, which was implausible given that Amy ended up living there for 4 years. Among this coastal paradise is where the family tragedy began. Amy hated Malaga. She kept a diary and constantly wrote about how much she despised living in Spain. She felt isolated and alone. She lived in a community of other expatriates, Irish and British, which is common to the region, and Amy reportedly tried to stay away from home as much as she possibly could. She was also reportedly bullied in school. As we can see from her diary entries, there was accusatory behaviour towards her parents, vague accusations of neglect, and an underlying feeling of animosity towards her family. Audrey, Amy's mother, has refuted claims that Amy had a difficult or abusive home life and dismissed any allegation of neglect. Audrey was accused of drinking excessively and smoking marijuana around her family. Audrey pointed out that Amy was subject to bullying at school, and this was playing a destructive role in Amy's psyche. One of the mothers in Spain contacted the Irish Embassy in 2005 to warn about Audrey's parenting and called the woman a head case. Amy had been pleading with her mother that she wanted to return to Ireland and live with her father. Audrey dismisses any allegation of child abuse.
I suppose since the time Amy disappeared, the media spotlight has been on you. There was reports in the press that she was unhappy and she ran away a lot. Can you just, you're here now, can you tell us now, what was life like for her leading up to her disappearance?
She did want to go back to Ireland. That was the plan. She was planning to come back here for her 16th birthday, which was February. She had rang her nana to make arrangements. She'd made arrangements with her friends to come back. She did eventually want to come back, but the way it was, her home was in Spain and she was only 15, so she had to stay put until she was old enough to make her own decisions, you know.
Amy was last seen at her friend's house, Ashley Rose, which is in the Riviera del Sol in Spain. This was on New Year's Day 2008. Amy had been staying with Ashley Rose several times and she said that she did not want to return home. Amy kept asking to stay over each extra day. They had been babysitting Ashley Rose's younger brother. Ashley Rose told Amy that her parents were hesitant to let her stay over another night because she'd already stayed a few days on the bounce, and Amy left Ashley Rose's house to go home at 10 PM, quite late for a teenage girl to be walking alone. She vanished on the dirt path on her way to her family. The family didn't notice Amy's disappearance and thus didn't report to the police for another 36 to 72 hours afterwards. Reports vary.
Do you think there's any information, do you think there's anybody here who knows something and they just haven't come forward?
It could be. Here, England, anywhere.
Anything is possible at this stage. Anybody, people might have seen her, anybody.
Audrey and David insisted that Amy never came home. However, there is evidence that contradicts this. Amy's mobile phone was found at her family's apartment after her disappearance. Audrey and David said that Amy left her mobile phone at home. Ashley Rose has countered this point. She distinctly remembers Amy pulling her mobile phone from her pocket when they were chatting, and Ashley Rose has asked Irish police, known as the Garda, to investigate the phone issue further. In the August 2008, 7 months after Amy's disappearance, Audrey and Dave's lawyer, One, had his home burglarised. The intruder stole Amy's phone, a laptop, and case-related information surrounding the Amy Fitzpatrick case. It could be a coincidence that the thief just took whatever was there, or there could be a reason he specifically took Amy-related data. One theory is that a famous Irish gangster took Amy. He was known around the area of Malaga and reportedly was seen with Amy before she vanished. His name was Eric Lucky Wilson. Lucky is currently serving time for a gangland slaying that took place in a packed bar. Witnesses reported seeing Amy in the company of a blonde woman at the Trafalgar bar in town. This was after leaving Ashley Rose's house. Amy was of course below the drinking age and looked very young too, so it's interesting to note whatever she was doing there, if in fact she was there, and who was this blonde woman that she was talking to. The Spanish are known in that area, at least, to be very lax about drinking age enforcement, and the local bars are usually extremely busy at night, particularly New Year's. Perhaps it was Amy or a look-alike. Spanish police did not believe that Amy ran away. Despite her unhappiness, there is no indication that Amy fled, given that she left her possessions back at the family house and had no money to her name. Amy spoke only English. She didn't speak Spanish, which could have been an obstacle the more inland she got. Although, as we mentioned, it was a very British area with many English speakers, on the face of it, it seems unlikely that she ran away, and this is what the Spanish police have been sticking to. The pain and memories were too much for Audrey, and she returned back to Ireland in 2009. She suffered a lot of grief, and her mental health had taken a toll. She continued efforts to find Amy from Ireland. She wrote a book and was featured on many news channels in the UK and her homeland Ireland. She was rigorous in her pursuit of Amy. During that time, she garnered fame, both positive fame and negative feedback. Audrey's other son Dean, Amy's brother, would eventually die at the hands of David Mahone. This horrific incident took place in 2013. Initially, they had a steaming argument at the gym over David's water bottle being taken from the exercise bike that David was using. Continuing the argument at home, David stabbed Dean to death. David had claimed that Dean had gone into the knife during the argument, but the stab was quite severe, going right through the stomach. David had also fled the scene and didn't call for help after Dean was stabbed. David tried to argue that Dean tried to kill himself by lunging into the knife, and that he was suicidal, and that his death was a suicide but not a murder. There's speculation that Dean had been speaking a lot about Amy leading up to his death. This has obviously led to the rumours that Dean's killing was to silence him, which we cannot know for definite. Dean was just 23 when he died. Amy was 15 when she vanished. Both incidents are a tragedy and every mother's worst nightmare. David served just 5 years for manslaughter and later married, you heard that correctly, Audrey. Audrey now has the burden of losing 2 children, one at the hands of her husband. They now live in Carrick-on-Sharon in County Leitrim. They both seem to have laid low since David was released, and Audrey has come to terms with Amy's vanishing and wants to move on.
Dave Mahon, seen here on the right, who was serving time for killing his stepson Dean Fitzpatrick, walked free from Wheatfield prison. While serving time, the convicted killer battled cancer. Mahon previously lost an appeal against his 7-year sentence but was released early this morning. The 50-year-old served 5 years for killing his stepson Dean Fitzpatrick 8 years ago. He was cleared of murder but convicted of manslaughter in May 2016 after he died in a stabbing during an argument about a bike at his home in 2013. Father of one Dean Fitzpatrick died from a single stab wound outside Mahon's apartment in Northern Cross in Dublin. Mahon claimed Dean's death was an accident. During his trial, he said Dean walked into the knife during a fight, but the jury ruled that he was lying. Mahon is reunited with his wife Audrey Fitzpatrick, the mother of Dean and Amy, who stood by him after he killed her son. After the trial, Audrey said she'd forgiven Dave for what happened. Her daughter Amy Fitzpatrick disappeared from the Mijas area of Spain in 2008 and remains missing to this day. 15-year-old Amy was last seen at 10 p.m. on New Year's Eve, leaving a friend's house on the Costa del Sol to walk home. She had lived in Spain with her mother, Mahon, and younger brother Dean after moving from Dublin. Aisling Roach, Virgin Media News.
Amy's father is extremely active in the investigation to this day. He's currently petitioning the EU to review the case. The Spanish police have closed their books on the case and deemed the mystery cold. Amy's aunt has said, "We've had numerous protests, handed in petitions to the government. This was an Irish child who went missing overseas, and the Irish government did nothing." Obviously, we can look at the stepdad, or more precisely, the mother's boyfriend at the time, and some of the allegations thrown at him and behaviours that he's shown, including responsibility for Dean's death. But there was nothing concrete to suggest he had anything to do with Amy. There was obviously animosity between the two of them, and a failure to respond to Amy's disappearance in time, and potential dishonesty surrounding Amy's phone, but never has anything substantial came to life about David Mahone. There's scant information into what happened to Amy, and I wish I could report more. We've had more than enough time to gather more information, and the Spanish and Irish police have dropped the ball here. Audrey has suffered a great deal, and the family themselves have seemingly decayed since their move to Spain, where everything seems to have gone wrong. Amy would now be entering her 30s, and a far cry from the troubled teen that just upped and vanished from the face of the earth. I'd love to know where she is today. Can we renew interest in this case and bring it back to the forefront of our minds?
Audrey, Dave, just wanted a few words to say before you go in and talk. How do you feel going in this morning?
I'm fairly nervous. See what they're going to charge me with. Get over it.
Have you been told yet what the charge will be?
We don't know yet. There's so many rumours.
You haven't heard of it.
We don't know. I was talking to the solicitor yesterday, and he said, "We'll just find out today what you're going to be charged with, and take it from there."
You'll defend it to the last.
Depends on what I'm charged with, Depends on what I'm charged with,
Okay. Audrey, just your own thoughts?
I'm just the same as him. I wasn't supposed to come over here at all, but then I can't let him see this on it's true on his own. We've gone through everything else together, so just as I came back on the other day last night, so I'm here now with him just to support him like he would with me, and everything with Amy and everything else all the time, so it's the same thing.